This is the Sony FX3, a little powerhouse of a cinema camera. Depending on which package you buy, the Sony FX3 or FX30 comes with this little XLR top handle for audio, but it leaves a lot to be desired. So much so that most FX3 users probably have it sitting unused in a drawer collecting dust. Now this is the Zoom F3, a tiny beast of an audio recorder with 32-bit float. So what if we could take the two of these little powerhouses and combine them together into one super-powered rig? Well, let's find out. A couple of weeks ago, I uploaded a video of my latest Sony FX3 cinema rig using the Cineback as a foundational core of the rig. And don't worry, I'll link to that video in the description so you can watch it after you finish this one. In last week's video, I mentioned that one of the shortcomings of that rig was the audio, and that I was hoping for a solution that would allow me to connect the XLR handle to be added to the Cineback rig. In the comments of that video, someone said that I'd rather find a way to mount the Zoom F3 and run a shotgun rather than using the flimsy plastic XLR handle that comes with the FX3. And that got me thinking, because David's right. The XLR handle is overrated for a multitude of reasons. It drastically limits your ability to rig the FX3 or FX30 because it takes up that top NATO rail spot. It's also incredibly difficult to mount an external monitor to it. If you've ever owned one, you also know that it's nearly impossible to figure out how to efficiently pack it into a bag. And if you're an FX30 owner or otherwise are just buying it separate, it's actually pretty expensive at $600. Okay, so given we don't want to use the XLR top handle, why the Zoom F3? I won't go into an in-depth review of the F3 since there are plenty of those videos out there, but a key thing that we like about it is it's small, it's rugged, it's about half the price of the XLR handle, and most importantly, it has 32-bit float recording. So what is 32-bit float recording? Well, it's basically the equivalent of shooting RAW for photos, but for audio. And you don't have to set the levels because it gives you enough latitude to adjust those levels afterwards in post. So having this rigged to the FX3 means that you've basically got a sound engineer with you at all times. So the issue with the Zoom F3 is that there's only one 1/4-20 mounting point, and it's rendered pretty useless by these two crossbars. So here's what we're gonna do instead. If you take a very small screwdriver set, you can actually peel back these little rubber covers and then remove the screws that are keeping those two bars in place and remove those two bars completely. Maybe like keep them in a safe place if you ever decide that you need them later. Once we have those removed, I want to give you two mounting options to mount the Zoom F3 to the FX3. The first of which will be my Cineback rig that I did the video on 2 weeks ago, but I also realized that many of you don't have a Cineback, so I'll also give you a second option as well. I'll also go over some of the drawbacks to this setup and how you maybe can address them. For the first option, I'm going to use a dual 15mm rod clamp and attach this to the top back of the Cineback's top cheese plate. We're going to attach it slightly offset to the left using a 1/4-20 to 3/8 inch adapter. We're then going to take a second dual 15mm rod clamp and attach that to the newly exposed backside of the Zoom F3. That kind of sounded weird. At any rate, I'm attaching that rod clamp using the right side mounting point, and you'll see why in just a second. Then I'm going to take two 4-inch 15mm rods and align them with the rod clamp on the body and match the two clamps together. This configuration allows the F3 to be locked firmly in place with 2 points of contact, but it can still be quickly removed without the use of any tools, so we can still access that battery port. The position of the recorder is now such that the left XLR input is slightly offset from the middle of the rig. This allows you to run an XLR cable into the input without getting in the way of our top handle. Now to attach the microphone, I'm going to use a small rig mic clamp to cold shoe. Admittedly, I don't really like cold shoe mounts that much since they do tend to come loose, but I appreciate that this one has slots to add some little extra tightening tension. This also won't work super well for longer shotgun mics since it can get a little bit wobbly, but maybe y'all have a different, better solution out there and can let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, check to make sure that you're already subscribed. So I'm using the Deity S-Mic 2S as my microphone because it's pretty high quality and it's really small. You can then mount the mic mount in one of three places: the small rig cage, the side handle, or my personal choice, a cold shoe mount that I have rigged on the front left of the Cineback. Any of those locations gets your shotgun mic well placed, but rigging it to the Cineback means it's really super compact and out of the way. Once we have the mic mounted, we can connect it to the recorder with a short XLR cable and we're good to go. Plus, if you want to add a second audio source like a wireless lav, you could easily run that into the secondary XLR input as well. Now, let's say you don't have a Cineback. There still is a solution for you, albeit a little bit less elegant. You can instead take your favorite 15mm rod base plate and make sure you have enough clearance on the back end of your V-mount battery. Then you take that Zoom F3 and rod clamp combo that we created already and slide that onto the back of your rods. We'll need to mount this with the XLR inputs facing backwards towards you, so you'll likely need some pretty long rods and probably a much longer XLR cable to make it work, but it definitely would do the trick. Regardless of which option you go with this setup, you can record directly into the Zoom F3 and then sync the audio in post. But I've opted to run a cable from the line out on the recorder to the mic jack on the camera itself. Not only does this give us really high quality backup audio, but it also means we're less likely to forget to hit record, since line out will pass through the audio even when not recording on the Zoom F3. But there is a potential problem with this. So let's get to the drawbacks of this audio rig. There's one glaring issue, which is battery life. The Zoom F3 runs on 2 AA batteries, and while it's rated for up to 8 hours of audio recording, the actual performance is much lower, especially when you're running phantom power, which is what you're gonna need to power a shotgun microphone. I tested this with some Amazon rechargeable batteries, and I got about 2.5 hours, which is roughly in line with what most folks report on forums and Reddit. So the good news is we have our trusty Cineback to run power to the Zoom F3. Kinda. The Zoom F3 does allow for USB-C power delivery, so we can take this D-tap to USB-C cable from Condor Blue and then route it from the Cineback's D-tap splitter over to our audio recorder. This gives you effectively limitless battery, but for some reason, routing power through the Cineback causes massive interference through the line out. You can still record directly onto the Zoom with no issues, but for whatever reason, any combination of anything you do, including the Cineback, will cause the feedback issue. This problem actually persists regardless of how you connect to the V-mount. Like, you could connect this D-tap to USB-C directly to the V-mount itself, or we could just go USB-C to USB-C, but as long as you're connected to the Cineback in any way, there will still be feedback. But if you try any of those connections directly to a V-mount that's not connected to a Cineback, there's no issues. So maybe this issue wouldn't bother you if perhaps you're not using a Cineback or you don't really care about that line out connection to the camera. But it is worth noting, and I'm curious if any of you can think of a solution. Like, maybe it's just that all D-tap splitters cause this feedback issue. I don't have another D-tap splitter lying around, so maybe you can test your ideas and let me know down in the comments. All in all, I am pretty stoked about this audio setup, and I'm glad that David gave me the idea. So if you have any other ridiculous ideas that you'd like me to try, I'm all ears. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.